Hello, it's Sarah from Hardcover Hearts, and I'm here with my week of reading wrap-up. This is where I talk about the books that I read this week, what I'm currently reading, and potentially could read next week based on my mood. So I literally just filmed about 10 minutes thinking that my phone and camera was on, and it wasn't. So this is round two. So let's jump into it because I have a lot of books to talk about. And as usually happens, last week I hadn't completed many, but I had so many in the works. This is the week where the fruits of those labors all were reaped. So let's talk about the first book I finished. This was Real Life by Brandon Taylor. This is a debut novel, and it feels very autobiographical. I said last time that he was a biologist. He is actually a biochemist. Our main character is a biochemistry grad student. He's a Black gay man from the South who has come to this university on scholarship. And he is the anomaly. He's the anomaly in many different settings and ways. And so much of this book is about him dealing with the futility of fighting these microaggressions or just overt aggressions that he receives. And so much of it is about the stereotypes that people have and the assumptions that they have about him, and his frustration at not being able to break through that. I found the first half really, really interesting. It spent a lot of time in the lab, and it's just a different setting than I've ever been in, and it all felt very, very real. I think the characters were frustrating and annoying, and I really didn't like them, but I don't think that was the point. I will say, and I've been not good at this, and I'm going to be better about it moving forward. There are trigger warnings in this book for sexual violence and child abuse. So keep that in mind if that's something that you want to be aware of. But ultimately, I think the book was powerful and had something fresh and new to say. And I feel like the ending was realistic. And I won't give any spoilers, but I think that it came and landed the ending in a place that makes sense. So that's all I'll say about that. But I'd like to know if you've checked out Real Life, because it's kind of getting a lot of buzz. And then next up, one of my favorite authors ever, Rebecca Solnit. This is Recollections of My Nonexistence. This is her memoir. Now, I did it in audio because she's the narrator, and her voice is just really, really lovely, and I like how she phrases things. And I think a memoir is such a personal thing that to be able to listen to the author reading their own material is pretty profound. So happy to have listened to this. Gives you such a flavor and sense, not just who she is and her evolution as a thinker and writer. If you're not familiar with her work, she's known as really almost an interdisciplinary writer. She writes about ecology. She writes about walking. She writes about freedom. She writes about feminism. She writes about storytelling. She pulls multiple threads, including like literature and poetry and things like that, to come up with her ways of telling stories. She also writes one of the most profound books I've read, and something that I refer back to time and time again, which is Hope in the Dark. And that is about activism and how activism really actually works in a society as opposed to how we think it should or doesn't work in a society. And this is just a great book. I highly recommend it. Specifically, I resonated with how she talks about the gifts that she's been given by her friendships with gay men. And she's very quick to say not all gay men, but many of the gay men in her life helped her understand language, helped her understand code switching, and helped her understand what liberation was, how to live freely. And how to be authentic and true to yourself. And I just related so much, and I loved spending time in the San Francisco that I spent in my 20s, a decade after her. And most lovingly, in her afterwards, she talked about, she gave a shout out and a thank you to someone who was my personal mentor, a gentleman named Tim Yohannan, who wrote for a magazine and created many, many institutions here in the Bay Area for the punk scene, and music stores, a distribution company, radio. He created Gilman Street, which is a music venue that still exists. That's all volunteer, all ages. And the things that I learned from that man have actually transformed me, and I use them to this day. He was a cranky iconoclast, and I miss him terribly. And so it was really beautiful to see her thanking him in this book. So that was lovely. Then I did a buddy read with Britta from The Second Shelf. I'll put a link to her channel below. And we read 1,000 Ships, and this is by Natalie Haynes. Really, really lovely cover. I'm not going to talk too much about this because Britta and I have a plan to do a in-deep conversation about this book coming up in the future. But what I love about this book is it's the Trojan War told by the women impacted and affected by it. And there's just a lot here. And so we'll talk about this in our video, so stay tuned for that. One caveat that I wanted to mention, or a side note, I guess I should say, is that she also was reading Rebecca Solnit at the same time, and we kept finding these threads of Rebecca Solnit's previous work that comes in here, specifically the thread about whose story. And Rebecca wrote a book about that, one of her most recent ones. And it really talks about how women are silenced by not being able to tell their stories. And so this entire book was a lovely opportunity to refresh those concepts that Rebecca has talked about in some of her previous work. And I was delighted to do that with Britta. Then I also finished Buddy Read of Belinda. So this is part of my 18th century women novelists group reads that I'm doing. This is the second. This is Belinda by Maria Edgeworth. I have one more check-in to do, but I finished this. I don't want to say too much about this because I really want to honor the group that I've read this with, which was filled with really smart, wonderful, wonderful people. So holding off on this. I'll probably do a full review of the 4 books at the end of this project as a nice summation to close it out. So stay tuned for that. And then I decided to take off yesterday and today, and I just wanted to kind of decompress a little bit, enjoy my time off, and read. So I did. This is Sweet Bean Paste by Durian Sukegawa, and it's translated by Alison Watts. This is something that I had spoken about in my haul video, my catch video that I posted last week. And so it just seemed like a perfect day to read it. So I grabbed it and really enjoyed this. This is a lovely story of a gentleman who is a pastry chef. He makes dorayaki, which is I think it's maybe like a whoopie pie is the only thing I can think of that I'm used to eating, but it's basically like two puffy pancakes with bean paste in between. And he makes these at this little stall. He gets by, but he's very uninspired and he's just kind of going through the motions. An old lady comes and offers to work for him and makes an offer, a price for her work that is so low that he almost has to say yes. So he takes her on, but despite the fact that he's very trepidatious, she's old, she's in her 70s, and she's also disfigured. And he's worried about what that will do if people see her. So he thinks that he's going to hide her in the back and have her make the sweet bean paste for this specific pastry. And as we go along, as you would expect, she ends up bringing some joy and teaching him life lessons. So it was charming and very lovely. I will say, for me, there was a lot of repetition in this, and there was a lot of education about her and how she got these deformities that felt a little heavy-handed. So I felt like I was being taught as opposed to just experiencing and kind of learning as we go along. And so that heavy-handedness really kept me from loving it, though I enjoyed it very, very much. So if you want a nice, heartwarming story, you could do worse than this. And then continuing on, I was kind of basically starting my Asian readathon a little early. I saw this on Scribd and grabbed it. It's At Dusk by Hwang Sok-Yong, translated by Sora Kim Russell. This was really great. I enjoyed this. This was only, I think it was 194 pages, very quick, like novella style. And it's a story, modern day, set in Korea. And we have four characters with really two timelines that kind of intersect. And it's two women and two men. And we really get the sense of Korea, and specifically South Korea, and the challenges that it's gone through in becoming a modern economy. And through the eyes of these, and through the experiences of these people. So we have an architect, and then we have a young man who's out of school and who's working. And then we have an older woman who grew up with the architect, who wants to reconnect with him and talk with him. And then we have a young woman who's just out of school and she's trying to survive, and she's working many jobs and just kind of hustling because she wants to be a playwright. And there's an interesting conversion of these characters. I just thought it was very, very well done. I really enjoyed the story. I thought there was a lot of power there. I liked the class aspects, and I liked understanding the evolution of these characters. I thought it was very well done, and I gave it a 4-star. So that's what I finished. Very happy with all of those books. Now let's talk about what I'm currently reading, because there's a lot. So the first thing that I'm reading is, it's Tim Winton's Cloudstreet. So we started this last month to kick it off for Aussie April. I have never read this before. This is my first Tim Winton. And both Greg and I talked about his use of language and sentences is very interesting. I really am drawn to the story. There's an energy here. There's interesting characters as well as an interesting setting. And I'm curious. I like the hard scrap nature of the environment that we're in. I like the community aspects so far, and curious to see where this is going to go. We basically have two families in the story, and the two families, one is really a family of religious belief that has been tested, and the other family are hard on their luck because of gambling. And they're forced together through interesting circumstances in this home on Cloudstreet. So I'm curious to see where this goes. I'm so far enjoying the writing, and yeah, enjoying the buddy read as well. And this is The Water Boys. This is by Ruqaya Izzidien. I really hope I did not just butcher that name. I'm going to have to watch Sean's video and see how he says that. We check in tomorrow, so I will hold my thoughts on this. Let's see. Then I'm listening to Acid for the Children. This is Flea's memoir. Man, so I'm not a Red Hot Chili Pepper fan, but I have 1 degree separation from Flea. A very good friend of mine is friends with him. And she's frequently mentioned about how much he's a big reader. And so I thought that I would take an opportunity and listen to the audiobook. And I have to say, there's a whimsy there, and he plays this impish character that is getting into trouble, but you kind of just laugh because of he reminds me of the Fool in the tarot deck. who just blindly goes smiling as he's going out on these crazy adventures and shenanigans and episodes. And he's struggling with morality, and he really talks about who he wants to be and where he lets himself down, and all of these things throughout his kind of hard-scrapped life. Didn't always have it easy, but you don't really get that sense when you're listening to it. I'm up to the point where he's just met and befriended Anthony Kiedis, and they're starting to get into even more trouble than he was getting in on his own and with his other friends. A lot of love of books comes through here. He talks so much about what reading has done for him and the books that he loved throughout his childhood, which is an absolute delight. So enjoying it so far, and more than I thought I would, I have to admit. Then believe it or not, I've made some progress in Coventry by Rachel Cusk. I've read the next 2 essays, and I've left my comments. And so I'm hoping to make more progress with this. But again, still taking it slowly because she's a heady thinker, and I want to make sure I'm in the right headspace to approach these. And it really helps to have a good buddy read partner as you do that. So we're doing that. Then this is what's coming up in my mood reading. I have mood, but I'm also going to be doing these buddy reads, and I have a lot of buddy reads for May. So trying to work out the schedule of the Shuttle. This is Frances Hodges Burnett. I will say The Secret Garden was one of my most favorite books when I was a little girl, and so I'm interested in reading this, which I understand is an adult book. It's not a children's book. So we'll figure out the schedule. It's a chunky one, so I have to figure out where I'm gonna fit this in. Very much looking forward to continuing my Anita Brookner project. This is a Look at Me, and this will be the 4th. Look at that cover. Is it not sublime? So I do this with Leo at A Little Book Life, and we'll be starting this soon. Then for the 18th century women novelists, we'll be starting Charlotte Lennox, the female Quixote. And it also has a different title. The title is The Adventures of Arrabella. So I think either work. It even says The Female Quixote or The Adventures of Arrabella. So looking forward to doing that. Again, Charlotte Lennox. And then I have another buddy read of The Good Terrorist by Doris Lessing. This will be my first Doris Lessing. I'll be reading this with Adam of Memento Mori soon. We have to work out a schedule for this. So obviously I have a ton of reading ahead of me. Looking forward to all of it. And May is starting to look like a really great, solid month. So I would love to know, do you have any thoughts or opinions or experience with any of the books mentioned here? And I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone is still continuing to stay in and practice social distancing, wash your hands, and please don't touch your face. Other than that, I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you so much. Bye.